Women with Ma taking a walk in the sun on a cold winter's day at Vinci, on the top of the hill of Vinci, which was an ancient sacred place some 50 miles from Benares. Chinese painting, which seems to me to be such a wonderful comparison of the white robes and the pallor, the absence of colour, which makes it so fascinating. It is so very reminiscent of scenes where Ma and all her close devotees round her are dressed in white. And the painting is by Rembrandt, and it's the return of the prodigal son into the welcoming arms of his father after he's led a dissolute life. It's a famous biblical story. I always think of this as very much like the paintings of Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane after the crucifixion, and he meets with Mary Magdalene in the garden. It's something to do with the foliage, and of course Ma is like Christ, and Mary Magdalene is prostrating in grief at his feet after the crucifixion. And he says, "Touch me not, for I have yet to ascend unto my Father." And it's the connection with the garden that gives it that quality. And I know that a priest saw this, a Christian priest saw it. He said, "Anandamayi is the most Christian living being that I have ever seen pictures of." Cathedral of Chartres, somewhere around about 1250, and it's a prophetess, and that is why I'm interested, because it's the idea of a wise woman. This is a wise woman. It's a sculpture of a Christian wise woman, a prophetess. Left is a head from Gandhara, the Buddhist centre in Afghanistan, modern-day Afghanistan, where the descendants of the Greek Alexander the Great, they developed a school of sculpture in which they used their own Hellenistic Greek art to produce figures of Buddha or Buddhist beings, somewhere around about the 2nd, 3rd centuries AD. And on the right is a sculpture by Rodin, who was a French sculptor of the 19th century, and I think that it has some rather lovely echo. They both make me think, well, particularly the Rodin makes me think of Ma. Meditative expression on her face. There's also on the left is a Rodin sculpture, the Praying Hands, and it's called the Cathedral. And of course this says something. I'm afraid I don't know what it is that it says, but it tells you what you get all the information you need from that script there. Ma's hands. At the top is a painting by a very devout Florentine painter called Fra Angelico, and I think it's a very, very beautiful holy scene of people who are paying their respects to a great divine figure. And here we are in the ashram in Benares, with the children very sweet in the background, 2 little children, and this nice, quiet conversation is going on. Very relaxed, lovely mood of quiet thoughtfulness in both images, I think. Two prophetic figures, or two, they're like muses. They are inspired by holy feeling, holy mood, holy spirit, holy state. And this one, it says what it's all about. Pax means peace in Latin. It's a figure that embodies peace, peacefulness. Mm-hmm. And the one on the right is a Maenad who is in a state of divine trance, a trance dance. Mm-hmm. Rather in the way that Ma used to do trance dancing when she was in her 30s. Mm-hmm. Here are two very, very different ways to look at the feminine divine. The one on the left is Indian, of course, and it's, I think, 5th century AD, and it's very formal, but also very gentle, and there's a wonderful suggestion around the eyes of illumination. And the one on the right is a painting of the Virgin Mary by Leonardo da Vinci. It's a detail. It's a very charming picture of Virgin Mary and a relative called Saint Elizabeth, and John the Baptist and Christ are children, and they're playing at their feet. And in the distance are wonderful mysterious mountains. But it's the tenderness of this Leonardo which I think is so particularly radiant and beautiful. There are very few pictures, in my opinion, there are very few pictures which have the quality which I see in Ma. Very few paintings can get that. It is so alive and so magical. This is one of the very few that has something of that. Very classical, very serene painting of the 15th century by Piero della Francesca. Very, very special painting, and it really does have a serenity, and it connects with the next two pictures. In a way, there's nothing to say here. There is such a parallel, such a close affinity, and of course the quality which is remarkable in the wall is the rapt attention to a focus, and of course the focus in the photograph of Ma is Ma herself. But if you look at this line of heads and then look at them bunched together in the other three paintings that are all 15th century Italian paintings, frescoes, and I really do think that there is a wonderful affinity between them, which makes one realize that in the domain of feeling, that religions are one, and one of the best ways to bridge the gap of difference between one faith and another is through the quality of feeling, and especially amongst young people. The young people are universally are universal in their loveliness. Yes. Have two of them together. I've always thought that there is an element of the primeval in Ma's, the structure of Ma's head. It's young and beautiful, but it's also very ancient. There's an ancient quality about Ma's head which always struck me as being quite extraordinary. And these seem to me to be part of the same ethos or mood. Mm-hmm. They are, of course, folk culture. And Ma has a very strong folk cultural element to her, doesn't she?
Yes,
she comes from a village. Mm-hmm. And that village equality was always there throughout her life, yes, although she reaches the heights of true aristocracy. Mm-hmm. This is Ma consulting with her close devotees about some matter. She's in earnest discussion about something serious, and everybody's in a wonderful state of almost of a kind of spiritual languor. They're languid in their relaxation. But of course one can equally say, well, it's Kuan Yin also. And this is a queen here. Which was built all the way around the building. Mm-hmm. You could go all the way around it. When I went to Vinci and I looked at this building and I thought, oh my goodness, this is Florentine. And it was, but it was rather specially Florentine. Here it's celebratory and joyous, but joyous in a kind of very, this is an evening sun scene, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And there's a wonderful, wonderful thoughtfulness on Ma's face. This one is a discussion. They are all talking. And the mixture of orange and white, I think is rather a lovely interplay, which sort of suggests the to and fro of conversation. Mm. I think this is a most remarkable example of Ma responding to somebody who's prostrating. She's gathering up into herself mm-hmm. the feeling that is being given to her. She's in a very, very exalted state. It's a sort of rapture. Quite amazing. I mean, it's a very special picture in that respect. With a hibiscus in her hair, I always love that. Very fond of hibiscus, and that's the best place for it. It's both with flowers because these are those little white flowers. Are they champa? Jasmine. Hibiscus and jasmine. Portrait in a sea of white. I asked her if I could take her. She was sitting on the veranda of Vinci, and I passed a message up. Would it be all right for me to come up and take a serious picture? Mm-hmm. Careful picture with a tripod. And she agreed. And sometimes people would say, why is she not looking at you? And I say, it's because she's looking at me, but my camera is below. Into the camera, she's looking at me. And this one in the garden at the Benares Ashram was one of the very, very, I think it's the first portrait that I took of her. When I had only been there 2-3 days, ever. And I think it's one of the most gentle, tender, sweet mood kind of photographs that I ever took of her. think is of some interest is that superficially, the first thing one thinks of, she's in a very stern mood. She's actually in a very exalted mood, and if you look very carefully, she's made an arch out of her forehead. Mm-hmm. So it's an amazing contrast between a kind of very high state of elevation, of high spiritual elevation on the one hand, and on the other a kind of compassionate receptivity to those who are around her. And they're both there in the face. And this is what I worked at until I got it right. The hands are deliberately played down because the whole picture rises up to the head. And the actual secret of it is that she's longer in the painting than she is in reality. There's more distance between her head and her hands than it was in reality as I looked at her when she was in this mood. Because I remember she was in the most extraordinary mood that day. And that remained with me indelibly. And in order to get that soaring upward effect in the picture, I have distorted. That's what you do in a picture to accentuate, to evoke something which you cannot get from a photograph. There she is at Vinci. Thompson used to say you could tell that she was a completely realised woman from the way she walked. She had no ego, absolutely no ego, and that was visible in her walk. It was a very interesting observation to make. And the portrait of her on the right, I think that one of the things about it is the hands, how she holds her hands. Again, it's receipt, isn't it? She's receiving something, mm-hmm. and she's saying, I am receiving what you're giving me. Very alert hands. It's the same photograph, the same transparency, but printed in colour and printed in black and white, and with a different composition. Creating, curiously enough, from exactly the same image, creating a different mood in both of them. They both sort of say something different. I can't define what the difference is, but it's there, isn't it? This is the photograph of her where there's no colour at all but white and cream. This is the one that everybody made a mess of. Couldn't print it. Figure of the Virgin Mary at the crucifixion. So it's very grave. But of course, the hand gesture, the way in which the hand in each is saying something. They're both saying different things, but the hand is being used for a didactic purpose. The painter has made the hand tell something for him, and I as a photographer have caught the hand gesture to go with the expression on her face. She's making a point, and you can see it in the shape of her lips. She's making a point. She's making something. She's being quite emphatic about something, and she's emphasising it with her hand. This is the Delphic Sybil, and the Delphic Sybil is the Greek archetype to which Ma relates. The Sybil is a wise woman, a prophetess, and somebody to whom people go to get advice about major things. The Delphic oracle would be consulted by the commander-in-chief of the army before going into battle with the Persians. And there's a lovely story about Kronos, I think, who goes to the Delphic oracle on the eve of a battle, and he asks the oracle, will there be victory or defeat in the... No, what was the question? There will be a... Yes, there will be a major defeat in the battle, the Delphic oracle says. There will be a major defeat. And he's delighted at this. He goes off and it's he who is defeated. You see, the oracle speaks in a kind of elliptical way to whatever it is that somebody's saying. Adventure. He is pausing. Her body is not doing anything, she's not speaking, she's listening, and it's become very receptive. It is a most extraordinary phenomenon. That very, very few people have that. I mean, people can be intelligent and kind and so forth, but this quality of using the body as a way of communicating. I mean, yes, of course, a dancer will do that, but that's a formal use of the body. Ma's using it as a means of intimate expression.